The parking lot is half empty on a Tuesday afternoon. A man stands next to a bright yellow car, not getting in, not walking away. He is just looking at it the way people look at something they are about to lose. You have probably seen that look before. You may have worn it yourself. Here is the question that look raises. What exactly is he mourning? The car? Or the version of himself that bought it? That question does not have a clean answer. It never did with this car. And that is precisely where the story gets interesting. Jump back to 1967, not 69-67, which is where most people get this wrong. General Motors released the Z28 as a racing homologation special, 602 units in the first model year. The engine was a high-revving 290 horsepower small block built specifically to qualify for Trans Am racing. There was no badge visible from the outside, no national advertising, no celebrity endorsement. If you wanted one, you had to already know to ask for it. That kind of knowledge was its own credential. The people who bought the Z28 in those first years were not making a statement to the neighborhood. They were making a statement to the track. That distinction matters enormously. They were a specific kind of person, one who measured the car by what it could actually do rather than what others thought it meant. That buyer has always existed in every era of every performance car, but they are genuinely rarer than the culture suggests. Now consider what happened 2 years later, in 1969, when Chevrolet quietly built 51 cars that almost nobody asked for and almost nobody bought new. The ZL1, an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch engine, officially rated at 430 horsepower, a figure that caused polite but unmistakable laughter among people who had actually driven one hard. The real output was widely understood to be substantially higher. Chevrolet's official rating was a number, not a claim. The problem was the price. Each ZL1 cost roughly the same as a modest house in many American cities at the time. Dealers ordered them, realized what they had done, and some quietly watched them sit. A few units were sold below cost just to move them off lots. The ZL1 of '69 was not a car for buyers. It was a car for the idea of buyers, people who theoretically existed somewhere but turned out to be almost entirely fictional. It was a ghost car. It passed through 1969 without being seen by nearly anyone who was alive at the time, which makes it genuinely strange and a little beautiful that the ZL1 name would become the most coveted badge in the entire Camaro lineup 4 decades later. That story ends where the parking lot begins, but there is a long middle section. Here is a scene you may recognize. Sometime in the middle of the 1980s, there is a poster on a bedroom wall. The car in the poster is low, wide, dark red, and sits with those characteristic dual hood vents pressed flat against a vague sunset. It is an IROC Z. The person looking at it has been looking at it for 2 years. They do not yet own a car. They do not yet know what horsepower means in any practical sense, but they know exactly what that car means. The IROC Z ran from 1985 to 1990 and was named after the International Race of Champions, a series where famous drivers from different disciplines competed in identical cars to establish who was actually the better racer when equipment was removed as a variable. The name implied purity, objectivity, the serious business of driving. It was the kind of name you put on a car when you want people to feel that even standing still, it is somehow competing. The car itself delivered something more complicated. Performance was real but significantly shaped by the emissions standards, safety regulations, and engineering compromises of the era. What the IROC Z actually delivered most reliably was the feeling of performance, which turned out to be something an enormous number of people wanted with equal urgency as performance itself. Not the race. The poster of the race. Not the track. The parking lot outside the diner on Friday night where everyone could see exactly what you drove. The IROC Z appeared on more bedroom walls than possibly any other Camaro in history. That statistic tells you everything important about the gap between what a car represents and what it actually does. And that gap is not a character flaw in buyers. It is simply how human identity works. People do not really buy cars. They buy versions of themselves, and the car is the receipt. Here is the reframe, the one that changes how you read everything that came before and after. The Camaro was never primarily a performance car. It was primarily a mirror. Every single generation, it reflected something specific about who Americans wanted to be at that precise cultural moment. In the late 60s, it reflected rebellion that came with technical credentials, the idea that rejecting convention could be scientifically justified. In the 80s, it reflected aspiration wrapped in tops and ground effects, because aspiration needed to look like it was moving even when it was parked. The car kept changing because the mirror kept needing to show something different, which makes the 2010 return genuinely fascinating to examine. After 8 years of absence, 8 years during which the Camaro simply did not exist as a production car, you could walk into a dealership and buy Chevrolet brought it back. The fifth-generation SS produced 426 horsepower. More relevantly, it wore styling deliberately pulled from 1969, as if someone had spent those 8 silent years studying exactly which visual proportions, which character lines, which overall stance triggered the most reliable nostalgia response in people who had been teenagers during the original muscle car era. And then a film franchise made it a giant transforming robot disguised as a car, and suddenly an entirely new generation of people had strong feelings about a vehicle they had never driven and could not fully explain. A child in 2010 who watched that movie and decided in that moment that the Camaro was something worth wanting, that child eventually became a buyer. Marketing teams dream about that kind of chain reaction. Most of them never live to see it happen. The psychology of the 2010 buyer deserves a moment of honest examination. This was not someone buying the fastest car available at that price point. There were faster options. This was someone buying a feeling they had either lived and lost or been culturally convinced they were supposed to have always wanted. Both motivations are entirely valid. Neither is particularly rational. The Camaro has never required rationality from its customers. Rationality was always someone else's department, the Germans, perhaps, or the Japanese. The Camaro operated in a different jurisdiction. Then came 2012, and Chevrolet did something that had every right to feel like a marketing exercise, but somehow did not. They brought back the ZL1 name, 580 supercharged horsepower, magnetic ride control, a genuinely sophisticated suspension system underneath what still looked like a muscle car. This was a car that could lap the Nürburgring at a time that made certain European manufacturers briefly reconsider their assumptions. The ghost car from '69 had been resurrected as something measurably, provably dangerous. The 2012 ZL1 buyer was not buying nostalgia. They were buying documented capability with a name that happened to carry 50 years of mythology attached. That is an unusual combination. It requires the mythology and the performance to coexist without one undermining the other. It does not happen often, and when it does, the cars that result tend to be the ones that linger longest in memory. The ZL1 of 2012 made the ghost car into something solid. It gave the name a body that finally matched what people had always imagined the original must have felt like. Now, the parking lot again, the yellow car, the man standing beside it. The 2024 Camaro ZL1 produces 650 supercharged horsepower. It is faster around a circuit than cars that cost 3 times its price. It handles with a precision that would have seemed science fiction to the engineers who built the 1969 original. By any objective technical measure, it is the best Camaro ever made. General Motors discontinued it anyway. The Camaro ended not with declining performance, not with aging engineering, not with the slow embarrassment of a car that could no longer compete. It ended at its absolute peak, which is either a profoundly strange business decision or the most honest ending a car like this could possibly have received. There is something specific about being the person who buys the last one. It is not the same as buying any other Camaro. Previous buyers could tell themselves the story would continue. The 2024 ZL1 buyer cannot. They know what they are holding. They know the name on the back of that car will not appear on a new car again in any near future that feels real. The muscle car era is not pausing this time. It is ending. The market has moved. The technology is moving. The cultural permission is narrowing. So what exactly does it mean to be that buyer? It is not nostalgia. Nostalgia looks backward. The last ZL1 buyer is doing something harder, acknowledging in real time that something worth preserving is disappearing, and deciding that the acknowledgement is worth whatever they paid for 650 horsepower. That is not a sentimental act. That is a very specific, uncomfortable kind of grief, wearing performance specifications as its formal attire. The man in the parking lot eventually gets into the car. The engine starts. The sound is exactly right, which is both comforting and a little devastating. He pulls out slowly, which seems wrong for 650 horsepower, until you realize he is not in a hurry. He already knows where this road ends. He bought a car that proved it at the same time. Some people buy cars, some people buy statements, and some, without entirely meaning to, buy the last line of a story that was being written before they were born. The interesting thing about those people, the ones who end up holding the final version of something, is that they almost never feel like collectors. They feel like witnesses, and witnesses, as a rule, drive very carefully, not from fear, from the specific weight of knowing exactly what they are carrying and where it will never go again.